Okay, great. Thank you for having me. I'm so sorry Aaron couldn't be here himself. He's actually in a forum with the Westchester Democrats with all the other council members, candidates. So feel free to hop over there at a later time to see the recording if you want to see all the candidates for that race. I wanted to do a quick introduction of myself. My name's Phan. I live in Los Angeles County. I've been doing a lot of political and grassroots organizing for the last few years. I'm really excited to join this campaign. Aaron's someone that I look up to. And I'll tell you a little bit more about him in this district. So Aaron was born and raised in Venice, graduated UC Berkeley 2008. He started his career at the height of the 2009 financial crisis, and he was helping low-income tenants who were facing eviction by working for the Eviction Defense Network. He later worked for public counsel and also as a deputy federal public defender. Now he's operating his own private practice, focusing on civil rights. Now, the primary reason that Aaron's running is with Mike Bonin dropping out of running for a re-election. Progressives and grassroots organizers wanted someone to run for office without criminalizing the unhoused communities in the district. Because for too long, we've had this framing about homeless people on the West Side. And Aaron believes that the wealthiest district in Los Angeles, which covers Mar Vista, Marina del Rey, Playa Vista, Brentwood, Westchester, Sawtell, and of course, Venice. We believe this district, the most affluent district in the city, needs to be doing more to address our housing crisis. We have not built enough housing to keep people who want to work on the West Side living on the West Side. And we obviously know that mass homelessness is a lot more than just drug addicts and people with mental health issues. We know that there are working families struggling to make ends meet. We know that there are around thousands and thousands of homeless youth in the K-12 system, the community college system, struggling to live, make ends meet. And this is because the city of LA has not done enough to create affordable housing to keep people in their homes. Aaron's plans is coming from his background as an eviction defense attorney, is to help strengthen rental protections, keep people in their homes. Obviously, we need to make sure that we're housing thousands of unhoused people, and we can do this by making sure that there's wraparound services and temporary shelters and permanent supportive housing. Of course, we need to make sure that funding for those things are consistent and being delivered at a compassionate way, making sure there's nuanced caseworkers. We're not really focusing on funding more cops and police people to do this work instead of paying social workers what they deserve to be doing this. And lastly, we definitely want to make sure that LA is confronting the worst aspects of climate change, phasing out gas storage near the wetlands and leading a push for 100% renewable energy by 2035. So if you're asking like, well, what's the difference between Aaron and the other candidates who are called maybe a little similar? I would say this: Aaron's the only candidate who's making sure that we don't play whack-a-mole with this mentality of just shutting down encampments, pushing homeless people outside from one community to the next. We have this mentality, not just in this district, but across all Los Angeles, where politicians and candidates are very quick to use the police as an easy solution to clear encampments and force people out of their homes, out of their communities. But we know that this doesn't solve the problem, it just diverts it. Last year, the Echo Park encampments was shut down in a very militant way. And we see a year later, most of these people didn't get permanent supportive housing, didn't get affordable housing, they're back on the street in a different district. And so we know that council members govern with a fiefdom mentality. They're content to just clean up the district and their problem and push it to someone else's problem. And that's not leadership, that's not governing. And I think we need to solve the roots of this issue. We'd love to just chat with y'all. I'll leave my contact information and we can follow up with any questions you may have. We've been endorsed by State Senator Van Allen, Assembly Member Isaac Bryan, community organizations like LA Voice, LA Forward, Youth Climate Strike Los Angeles, and recently the Working Families Party. So I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability, and I'll leave my contact information for anyone who has direct questions about our campaign or wish to get more involved. But thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate Democratic clubs. I've been involved in many of them myself, and we want to stay in touch regardless of whether you support us or not. I'm here to make sure that your issues and your concerns are elevated as well, because we know that leadership means a regional approach, right? We know that the county, the states, and our city districts need to be working in conjunction on our shared crises and the housing crisis, the environmental crises. And so I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Before we go to the questions, just so I can keep an eye on the time, is anybody here now who is a candidate or a campaign representative? Okay, that's fewer people I have to worry about fitting in. So, although of course the more the merrier. So Kimberly, please go ahead, and anyone else who has a question for Tim/Erin, please raise your Zoom hand.
Hi, I'm a mom and pop landlord, and I would love the opportunity to be able to be helpful to someone who's trying to get some housing, but I also need to know if there'll be any type of propositions to incentivize small landlords to be able to provide housing for these lower income and I don't know what the other transitional housing. I'm trying to think of the word is. Does he support any type of programs to protect us in our smaller properties and to help us be willing and comfortable with the idea?
Yeah. And obviously, so I'm sure you're familiar with this. Since the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, we saw this kind of rise in the way that private equity and like foreign investment and private equity firms buy up a lot of housing in cities across the United States, right? We know that there's like a lot of vacancies in these housing units that aren't, being used for any reason. So we definitely, endorse a vacancy tax to kind of disincentivize these foreign investors and people who have no real stake in these communities. So mom and pop landlords who own like 1 or 2 or 5 properties, like that's not my concern. That's you aren't the reason like there isn't enough affordable housing, right? So definitely would love to talk offline and work out solutions and see what we can do to make sure that folks are getting protected, because I understand that it's not lumping like a landlord who only has like a few properties like to manage versus like the corporations and the firms that are like have no real stake in the lived outcomes, the community.
They are the ones you should be after. You're quite right.
Yeah, exactly. So I understand the nuance, and with we definitely know that we need to make sure that there's enough housing being built on the west side to make sure that people can stay there and live there, because we've lost a lot of people moving to other states, other parts of the county, and there's something lost in the west side, the community aspect, right? We're seeing less diverse communities come through. We're seeing the art and the culture, the music that used to be here not be as vibrant anymore. That sense of collective, being around people, we want to bring that back, because Erin grew up with that, and I think we all kind of miss it too. And so, yeah, thank you for that question. That's really helpful. I'll pass on your concerns to Erin.
Great. Next question is from Kin G. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff. My question has to do with environmental justice. I'd like to know where Attorney Erin Darling stands on environmental justice with regard to the fact that in your district, I believe you're staring at a whole Bayona wetlands that is being threatened with being bulldozed by forces. And I think what forces those are. But in any event, if you could share with us where Attorney Darling stands on environmental justice, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, environmental justice is something that's crucial to the heartbeat of this campaign. We know that we have to protect the wetlands. We have to make sure that there's, people can walk, people can enjoy, that the tourists can bike and skate and be be in their community, right? And we know with the RV issue that right now that we have a lot of unhoused folks who use RVs and are it's a potential hazard, right? We have to make sure that folks get off the street and into the public services and get into shelter systems. But incentivizing people to do that in a humane way is something that is part of the solution. We have to make sure it's happening, especially I think the ethos that I really want people to understand with how Erin is thinking about this. Historically speaking, when I think about environmental justice, I think about communities of color who've been negatively impacted, Indigenous groups, Black communities, like Latinx communities, Osakan communities who've been affected by poor soil quality, air quality, misabuse of the land, abuse of the land. And so making sure that these communities are at the table when these decisions are being made on how do we renovate housing, how do we make transit options more desirable, how do we make sure that these communities are part of the solution and not just window dressing that just comes after, because in terms of making sure that everyone enjoys this in an equitable way and governs together, that's kind of how we have to govern. And I wish I could get to a deeper specific with the wetlands. That's not my personal strong suit. And so I'll definitely have Erin follow up with you personally. If you have questions, I'll drop my contact information for folks here. But thank you.
Thank you. How does the attorney plan to deal with SoCal Gas, who is the 300-pound gorilla in the room?
Yeah, SoCal Gas. I definitely remember when talking about it. I'm not the person that can answer that specific question, but we have talked about public utilities in general. Can we follow up offline with that? I don't want to misspeak for him, but he definitely has position on that one. So I definitely don't want to misspeak that one.
No problem.
Yeah, let me share my contact information for you, and you can just.
Thank you so much.
Great. So if anyone else has questions, please raise your hands. Otherwise, I'll fill in for a little bit until our next guest shows up. Okay, well then I'll ask. Has Mike Bonin endorsed in this race?
Mike Bonin is he is not. He's been supportive of us. I don't want to say that he's endorsing us per se. We've talked. We've been in conversation. We support the council member. We've seen what he's gone through, and I don't want to like leak too early. But yes, he definitely is supportive of our campaign in a way. I think the biggest reason Erin ran is because when Mike Bonin went through the recall shenanigans, people didn't like his approach to how he was dealing with this issue with the homeless crisis, right? And when he unexpectedly, decided not to run, grassroots organizers and progressive orgs like Mar Vista was, for example, organizers came together in a room and we needed someone to replace Mike. We need someone who can understand that criminalizing unhoused communities is not the way to go. And that's how Erin's name got lifted to the top. And he stepped in, with no real preparation to run for office, because most people who run for office, they spend years thinking about this, right? They spend a lot of their political capital in rooms like this, getting to know legislators and getting donations and building those relationships, preparing for the run for office, right? Erin jumped in like 3 months ago on a whim because the community needed him. And so I would say that Mike Bonin has been supportive and we are in constant communication. In terms of a formal endorsement, we're not ready to make that public yet, but he definitely is supporting us. I could say that much.
Okay, Disa Lindgren.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for being here. I just wanted to let you know that we have the same struggle in Culver City that you describe in the communities that Erin Darling is running to represent, and that is, some people having really awful attitudes about our in-house neighbors and seeking to criminalize them by forcing their removal, but without viable places for them to live. And I really appreciate Darling's willingness to step up and run, because it is not easy. And the people like Mike and people in our community, people who represent on our city council, they are being pilloried, and vilified because of their position. So we need people who really understand the depth of the complex challenges, but they really want to do something constructive that will actually make a difference. So thank you.
No, thank you for saying that. And today I read a story about Culver City, and I believe the council is getting a lot of attention for the expansion of the lanes. Correct? I believe that's a big.
It's a very long story, but there's just going to be a bulb out, an extension of the sidewalk under a certain overpass.
Yeah.
To not
But then-
displace the small group of people who are
Yeah.
living under the freeway.
Yeah, and I saw some of the how do I say this, the online reaction to this, and it's very similar to what Councilmember Bonner has gotten, and a lot of, you know, and like I believe that like kind of de-escalating the vitriol of this conversation is so important, because people online take shots, people want the shortcut solution, and they don't think about how a solution or a non-policy solution doesn't actually address an issue, it just deflects it. And so myself and Erin, we're committed to making sure that we do not criminalize or add on to the over-policing that is currently happening across LA with this issue. Erin's the only candidate from this district that attended the Black Lives Matter forum a few weeks ago. He's the only candidate that's pledged he signed the pledges to not increase funding or hire new cops without accountability. He's committed to a deliberative, a democratic budget with the community, and he is not taking any money from cop unions or law enforcement associations or private developers. We're really intent on trying to make sure that we're running as clean a campaign as possible, as scrappy a campaign as possible. And we know that we need partners in local jurisdictions as well to do this work. And that's why I care very deeply about what happened in like neighboring districts, because governing together is how we make our way out of this. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Disa. So let me stop the recording now.